Since its inception, the Kingdom Hearts series has been blessed with the wonderful formula of throwing Sora, Donald, and Goofy into the worlds of Disney films. Very few gaming franchises are lucky enough to have as much of an interesting and varied set of levels as the Kingdom Hearts series does. So I thought today I would share my appreciation for the various worlds across the series and essentially my childhood. At first I thought of doing a tier list, but it seemed like there were way too many worlds for that, and it would get redundant quickly. Therefore, I decided to make a top 10 list of all of my favorite Kingdom Hearts worlds. Honestly guys, this was hard given my extreme love for the series and nostalgia with all the worlds. I had to make some unfortunate exclusions from the list and even the honorable mentions. But that just goes to show how many good worlds there are in the series. So if your favorite isn't on the list, just know I probably love that world anyway. These are just my absolute favorites. I thought to limit this to Disney worlds only, but I realized that didn't make a lot of sense when trying to appreciate the series levels as a whole. So I did sprinkle some original worlds in the list, but I left it to a minimum to avoid repeating myself. From Kingdom Hearts 1 to 3 and all things in between, here are my favorite worlds in the series. Let's quickly start off with my honorable mentions, or essentially numbers 15 to 11. Number 15 in the honorable mentions is Deep Jungle. I understand people hate this world, but I think when you take the less desirable aspects away from it, such as the vines, then you end up with a genuinely immersive world. The crashing of the drums and distinct flute sound in the world theme, coupled with popping, vibrant greens and blues of a jungle, join together to create a world that feels alive and expansive. In all honesty, I'm not sure how this world differs too much from other KH1 worlds. You still get lost in Monstro or the Cave of Wonders. At least in this world you can see where you're going a little bit better. I also think this world is super special for the fact that it will likely never be used again. It will always be nostalgic and an underrated classic. Next is Prankster's Paradise. This is in my opinion the best world in Dream Drop Distance, but specifically Sora's route. It was nice to see Monstro return for Riku, but to me that's basically a different world. Prankster's Paradise in just a couple rooms really captures the feeling of going to boardwalks by the ocean during the summertime. The music compiled with the aesthetic of the world just makes it a really fun time whenever you replay Dream Drop Distance. Next at number 13 is the Pride Lands. This world I feel is very give and take, very much due to its vastly different gameplay formula, shaking up Sora's base combat entirely as well as his movement, size, and basically everything about the game you played before it. This allows for some of the most fast and fluid combat in the game. Ferocious and quick like a lion, Sora feels almost as if he's in a dry form in his base combos and magic alone. But this comes with sacrifices of summons, dry forms, and in general, the gameplay you are used to. This give and take formula extends to the rest of the world. The Oasis and Jungle has some of the best locations in the series, but it's directly followed by a literal desert wasteland. I mean, where's this world out here? I want to go there. Nonetheless, that wow factor from all the way back in the day of seeing Sora transform into a lion and having the gameplay change has remained present throughout the years, and I expect it to stay. Some of my most distinct memories with KH2 are also with the Pride Lands, and I'll always appreciate it for that. Number 12 in the honorable mentions is Halloween Town. I've always loved visiting this world, and so does Sora it seems. There's something about being in Halloween Town that just feels so cool. Like there's this mysterious world where travelers are not welcome, and we should only be here for a certain amount of time. Get in, get out. Go see Santa, then get out. The way they make the outer world completely blank except for the buildings and other landmarks that surround you makes this feel like a claymation set and you're part of the animation. And then in contrast to the gloomy and dreary Halloween Town, we have Christmas Town, which has always been such a cozy place that I enjoy visiting every time I play the game. It was incorporated so well, and again is one of those KH2 exclusive locations that really bring me back. I recently gained a newfound appreciation of the film, and I think it's great how Kingdom Hearts has been recognizing this series since day one. And the last honorable mention is 100 Acre Wood. There's something special about this world. I feel like we've hit the peak of serenity that video games could ever provide. This is it, it doesn't get much better than this. It's just an absolute joy to be in this world regardless of the strength of its plot or quality of its minigames. Its different locations through the forest always amaze me. I love these landscapes, there's so much wonder to behold. I gotta see this world in the next generation. It's a real shame they didn't put it in KH3. Haha, did you get it? All jokes aside, I think this world in KH3 is passable. I'd rather it be here than not be here. It's a staple for the number titles, and if I had to choose a small world or no world at all, I know what I'm picking. And I think what adds to the pain is that what's here is so well done. It's a beautiful world, it's just not very big. My favorite part of 100 Acre Wood is the varied areas amongst the forest, and it's just not there. And even if I did prefer the minigames, there's only one of that too, just with different variations. I think we can all agree that the peak of 100 Acre Wood is in Cage 2. Taking a step back from the action-packed adventure for an uninterrupted, peaceful time for a few minutes is always appreciated. For the future, well, I guess there's always next time. Starting off the true list at number 10 is Land of Dragons. Only fitting this start us off given how this is basically the first world in Cage 2. Land of Dragons will always be synonymous with the start of this wonderful adventure of Sora, Donald, and Goofy's second outing. Because this world never appeared again outside of Cage 2, I often find myself caught off guard that this world actually exists. Like sometimes I think to myself, hey, it'd be cool to see Mulan in a new Kingdom Hearts game, and then suddenly I remember that they already did a Mulan world over 15 years ago. I would say the best part about this world is the varied landscapes and locations. Going from the campsite to the snowy mountains, down back to the Imperial Castle, makes it an always interesting playthrough. I also love how the backgrounds reflect this oil painting style. It feels like you're playing through a story told in folklore. The aesthetics and art style of this world also heavily remind me of Avatar: The Last Airbender, which goes hand in hand with Cage 2 since they were coming out around the same time. Being a part of this war provides a constant sense of urgency and importance to your presence in the Land of Dragons. While Sora doesn't feel as relevant to this war as he does in the Battle of Hollow Bastion, for example, I still feel like through the story you get to work with Mulan and provide a pretty significant service to this world. I do have to say I think that Cage 2 syndrome of empty hallways kicks in this world heavily. That's because we're going through quite a vast area in only a few rooms. Where past worlds such as Beast Castle have the luxury of a relatively small scope, the Land of Dragons has to represent a big part of a country in the same amount of space. With how ambitious that idea is, it was inevitable that it would fall short in at least some areas. Now, I'm not going to be too harsh on it. Like I said earlier, I appreciate how ambitious and varied its landscapes are. But when you visit the world without the context of the story, it does feel more empty than other worlds in the series. I think it really helps when you use your own imagination to fill in the gaps. Adding your own context for your visit post-story does make it feel a lot less empty, but if you don't do that, there's not really much of a reason to return after the story. So, am I satisfied with Mulan in the Kingdom Hearts series? Well, no, but that doesn't mean I think this is a bad world by any stretch of the imagination. Obviously not, it's on my top 10. I think what it did well was amazing, and is why it's at number 10. Great music, great atmosphere, great world design, great party member Mulan is really cool, and the story's pretty awesome too. But I think that what they didn't do well, they could totally do in the newer games. So I would love to see this world return if they ever get around to it. Next up at number 9 is Toy Box. Somehow Toy Box captured this aesthetic of late 90s, early 2000s when Toy Story was in its prime. I don't know if it's the lighting or just the general design of the world, but this whole level looks like something ripped out of one of my home videos. My nostalgia for this world is not only from my childhood, but it's also nostalgia for Cage 3 itself. Toy Box for a long time was one of the few worlds we saw and even knew about for that matter. There are so many great memories of the wait for Cage 3 that are also tied to Toy Box. The trailer when they revealed Toy Box and the fake release date was so special, I'll always remember that day. And when the demo was released, forget about it. I must have watched every single video containing demo footage that existed on the internet, multiple times. Memories of my science class occur to me when I entered Toy Box, since I would often spend a few minutes watching the demo footage when labs were done. So in quite a comical cross between real life and video game experiences, there are certain areas of Galaxy Toys that will always remind me of my chemistry room in high school, which brings back good memories. Toy Box does a really great job at making you feel the difference in size and scale. Since you've never seen Galaxy Toys from a human's perspective, they really had to enforce the idea that yes, you are a tiny action figure in a small world for humans, but a huge world for toys. They accomplish this with many nooks and crannies that would never be explorable in normal worlds. They also provide some pretty cool juxtapositions between Sora and regular objects. For example, the to-go cup is as big as Sora's body, when normally it's the size of his head. One strange addition to this world is Yozora. Don't get me wrong, the integration was well done. It's really cool to see the secret final boss of the game just hanging around in this world casually. Somehow that makes it seem more threatening. But the weird thing is, why this world in particular? I think a Verum Rex connection would have made more sense in San Francisco of all places in this game. I guess you can just add it to the list of the crazy crossovers in this series. But come on, what's next? Space Cats is a master of masters? My best guess for why they did this is because they could definitely count on Toy Story returning in the series, and Yozora is definitely going to be a recurring character. Looking at it from their perspective, it makes sense to plant the seeds for a future main character in a world that they can bet on using again, so I understand why they did it. But there's something I really dislike about this world that is subsequently the reason why it's only at the 9th spot. You guessed it, the mech suits. I don't enjoy controlling them, and I can't stand fighting them as Sora alone. They basically make you use the mechs for the entire world, and that's just annoying. I didn't come here for mechs, I came here for Kingdom Hearts. You literally walk into a room and 15 of these guys show up, and unless you want to be there for 20 minutes, you basically have no choice but to use them. Look, I applaud them for trying something new, but it was just too much, and I would not want to see them return. But it looks like they're here to stay! Yeah! Despite the mechs, Toy Box is an absolute joy to play. Seeing Sora, Donald, and Goofy interact with these characters, and having them translate the world of Toy Story into Kingdom Hearts was a long time coming. After all these years, we finally got the Toy Story world that we deserved, and I expect it to return. Next on the list is Deep Space. If you checked out some of my older videos, you would know that my most wanted world for Kingdom Hearts 3 leading up to the game was Lilo and Stitch. With Lilo and Stitch being my favorite Disney film, it's not a mystery why I would want it in Kingdom Hearts 3, and it didn't happen. Now, we do have Deep Space, and I enjoy it a lot, but as I'm sure most of you know, this world is literally only based off the first 5 minutes of the movie. The peak of the timeline in Deep Space is with Ventus, and Stitch drops off into Hawaii. That happens in the film at the 5-minute mark, give or take. I don't know why, but my most wanted for everything always gets a short end of the stick. I wanted a Lilo and Stitch world in KH3, he's a summon. I wanted Sora for Smash, Sephiroth. Well, I guess it's better than nothing. Now, I'm not knocking Deep Space for this. I actually think it's quite remarkable that it could take 5 minutes of a film and turn it into a pretty solid world. But what I am upset about is that they never followed up on it. Deep Space always seemed like they were setting up something. Stitch made strong bonds with Terra, Aqua, and Ventus, and his story is kind of unresolved. Not only do we not know what happened to him after Deep Space, but we also don't know why he's in Hollow Bastion or what happened with his world. I think it would have been perfect for Sora to team up with Stitch in KH3 to find Terra, Aqua, and Ventus. It also would have helped substantially with the pacing of KH3. I'm often one to defend the Disney worlds in KH3 because there's plenty of plot there, but most of it is background stuff, whereas this one could have been directly about Terra, Aqua, and Ventus. Well, it's too late for KH3 to have Lilo and Stitch now. At least we have Deep Space. In terms of world aesthetics, this one knocks it out of the park. I think they did a really good job representing the Lilo and Stitch universe. It very much follows the art style of the original film. These cool blue, green, and purple colors combined with interesting space architecture and language makes for a very aesthetically pleasing world. I actually think it's pretty funny how much of a shocking change of pace this world is for Birth by Sleep. All the worlds before this one follow a very similar thematic structure. A fairy tale kingdom with a castle, fairy tale kingdom with a castle, fairy tale kingdom, castle, steampunk fairy tale kingdom, castle. Outer space! Disneyland Kingdom with a castle. Now, the world is fairly short, but that's to be expected given the nature of Birth by Sleep. Now, even though it's short, everything within the cutscenes, gameplay, and don't even get me started on the music, it's all top notch. The battle and field theme of this world is some of the best in the series in my opinion. I love how this isn't even really a world, it's just another ship that's flying through space that you just kind of stumble upon in the lanes between. For Ventus' story, I love how they had this huge alien space parasite that infiltrates the ship. That was so cool, especially with the theme of space. And to top it all off, they actually let Stitch join your party for Aqua and Ventus. And see, this is why I love Kingdom Hearts. These crazy crossovers of your favorite Disney characters in gaming. They didn't have to do this, but they really went the extra mile. Being such a huge fan of Lilo and Stitch, it's such a joy to see a crossover with my favorite gaming franchise of all time. Even in Cage 2, it's so cool to see Stitch interacting with these characters. So, back to an earlier question. Am I satisfied with Lilo and Stitch in the Kingdom Hearts series? Well, no, in all honesty, not really. I think it really needs a proper world in the newer generation, whether it's Hawaii or back in deep space. But I do think that this is the best world in Birth by Sleep and is always a charming and great experience every time I play through it. Next is Monstropolis. For starters, I never expected this world to come to Cage 3. Well, I mean, I did when it got leaked, which was unfortunate. After that, there was really only one world that was actually a surprise, which was Pirates. And yeah, there was still Frozen, but I think everyone and their grandmother was predicting this world, so it wasn't too much of a surprise to see it revealed. Out of all the worlds in Cage 3, I feel like this one in particular was really chosen solely because they wanted to do it. If you take a look at the rest of the Cage 3 world roster, you're gonna find worldwide iconic film franchises, brand new film franchises, and one classic franchise. Now, Monsters Inc. as a film can certainly be grouped into some of those categories, but I don't think it's as explicit as the biggest movies in the world such as Toy Story or Frozen. This is a relatively cult classic from the early 2000s that isn't necessarily in the mainstream public discourse. And because of that, this world feels the most genuine to me. I feel like it's here because they had a great idea and wanted it in the game. Now, that's not to say there's anything wrong with the other worlds. As you'll see, there are worlds that I mentioned that are higher than this one. But it's just a part of it feels like, oh, of course they did Pirates of the Caribbean. Everybody in the world knows Jack Sparrow. I always loved this movie growing up. There was something so intriguing about the world and its characters. Cage 3 really captured that feeling with its world design. The office section of this world is literally stripped right out of the movie. They just took the film, pressed copy and paste, and here we are. There's so many little details. They even put Roz's office in here. Don't get me wrong, I love it when they expand a world and put their own unique spin on things. But just nothing beats that feeling of playing through recognizable areas from the films you grew up with. It always puts a big smile on my face, and it's something I think they should do more often. I'm looking at you, Arendelle. Their expansion of the factory was still highly appreciated. This world had the advantage of being mostly indoors. This way, there are very few places you can visibly see in this world that you can't go to. It allows for total immersion, since you never have to get hit in the face with an invisible barrier. I really gotta commend them for letting us go through the door vault. It's not entirely explorable, but that would have been a world in itself. They also knew what the coolest part of the original film was: sliding on the doors. In an old video of mine before this world was even ever leaked, I mentioned how sick it would be to see this included in the game, and they actually did it. They really took creative liberties with monster technology and aesthetics, and it really paid off to make the Cage original areas blend in perfectly. But my favorite part of this world is not the design. Rather, it's the story sequences. Monsters Inc. is now under attack. You now have to progress through the dungeons, protect Boo from Unversed, and reclaim the factory from Randall. There's a persisting sense of urgency, and rightfully so, since this world only takes place in a couple hours. Unlike previous worlds that give us clear indications that significant time has passed, the events of this world take place in one night. One night to save the factory and to send Boo home. Making it through the Heartless Gauntlet is constant action and exhilaration. After the intro section, there are very few moments of respite. It's just an all-out war for Monsters Incorporated. This builds a strong intensity that can almost be compared to Cage 2 Hollow Bastion. I said almost. Couple this with an amazing score, especially during the fire set piece, and you feel like you're a part of a third act of a movie. Seriously, if you don't remember Monster Smash Code 72-16, you're missing out. Each aspect of this world, from the music, design, gameplay, and cutscenes, when synthesized, provides some of the most consistently top-notch experiences you can find in a Kingdom Hearts game. You know, it may be too early to say they made the definitive world for this property in their first try, but it also just might be true. If there was a way to make 2010 a video game, somehow Kingdom Hearts 3 did it with Tangled. There's something about this world that really brings me back to those good old days when Tangled was first released and I was still happy-go-lucky to some degree. Tangled is a super special inclusion simply because of how significant the film is. Tangled, as well as Princess and the Frog, kicked off a cascade of magnificent Disney films throughout the 2010s. After that, Disney had a new renaissance, and I feel like Tangled represents this age of modern Disney. It was definitely a significant and important inclusion in the Kingdom Hearts series. When compared amongst the larger Disney pantheon, I think this world and Tangled itself holds its own pretty well. And come on, is this not the most beautiful world in the series? I know graphics aren't everything, but in a world where the graphics are so impressive it makes you want to cry, I think it's worth mentioning. You can really just come to this world and relax and have a good time. It's all about bright, sunny, spring days, enjoying the scenery and nature. I feel like you can actually feel the wind on your face and smell the trees. It's entirely immersive. It's a classic Sora, Donald, and Goofy adventure to start us off in KH3. And that's the thing. A classic Sora, Donald, and Goofy adventure. This world is the perfected formula of it. Well, at least the formula from the first two numbered games. What formula, you may ask? Good question. It's the model set up that Sora, Donald, and Goofy go to a new world, meet the main characters, and progress through the plot of the film. They'll go from room to room, beat some Heartless, insult a bad guy, and then beat the final boss. There are worlds in KH3 that break this formula, and I think the future of Kingdom Hearts will continue that trend. But it is quite refreshing to see classic Kingdom Hearts in the new generation. Now, this way of doing the worlds may not be as impressive as the other way around. Breaking new ground and doing it well is always going to be more praised than following the format already set years prior. This is why KH3 did both and balanced it well. There are a couple worlds like Tangled and Frozen that follow the precedented formula, and some other worlds like Big Hero 6 and Pirates that shatter the formula and try something new. Then there are worlds like Monsters Inc. and Toy Story that are somewhere in between. And at least in my opinion, Tangled is the definitive world of the classic formula. The music paired with the absolutely beautiful forest is by far some of the greatest experiences I've ever had with a video game. The way they integrate Rapunzel's journey to the castle into Kingdom Hearts doesn't seem too trivial, and for the most part it isn't. And that's the exact reason why it's so much fun. The journey through the forest is never a drag, unlike later parts of other worlds in this game. This is with the exception of the horse fight and the misty forest. But neither of those are even really that bad. And they actually went the extra mile and made the kingdom playable. For some reason, I never expected this, but I absolutely love it. This is one of my favorite locations in all of Kingdom Hearts, and while it's somewhat limited, I have a hard time hating on it. This world, much like Rapunzel, is one of our first outings into an adventure we couldn't wait to embark on. We waited 6 years for KH3, and one of the first Disney worlds is about that first day into a new world after being locked up for years. You really feel Rapunzel's excitement and wonder because for the most part, you're getting it too. For better or for worse, I expect this world to stay in KH3 and not return in the series. Therefore, it will always remain a nostalgic world for KH3. This world will always remind me of the first outing into a brand new Kingdom Hearts adventure. They truly optimized Tangled's potential and translated the film perfectly into the game. It's a definitive formula of classic Kingdom Hearts that will always provide an unforgettable experience.
Yep, unforgettable. Just like your face.
We've now reached the top 5, and at number 5 is Hollow Bastion. Is there even any question that this is one of the best worlds in the series? And as luck would have it, the first OG world on the list shows up at number 5. Like I said, I wanted to keep the original worlds to a minimum. I considered placing the world that never was and the Keyblade Graveyard on the list. But after an examination amongst all of these set-piece worlds, I think Hollow Bastion proved itself worthy of the spot. While the world that never was has some of the coolest world design in the series, its story events, while still great, don't beat Hollow Bastion's in my opinion. The Keyblade Graveyard in KH3, I think, does give Hollow Bastion's story sequence a run for its money, but the world itself really lacks visual complexity. I love the labyrinth idea, but there really isn't much to see here outside of the story context. This list, as you've probably noticed, has been much more focused on world design and layout rather than story. If it was primarily focused on the story, the Keyblade Graveyard would be at the top of the list. Now don't get me wrong, story is a significant factor in my world choice. But in my opinion, what makes a great world is both a fantastic story and great world design. The Keyblade Graveyard is sort of a story set piece, and while I love that in its own right, that's also the reason why it misses the mark for this list. On the other hand, Hollow Bastion is much more than a story set piece. It actually has a lived-in and developing world. It really has its own personality beyond the story, and I feel like it can even be its own video game at some point. This world's general aesthetic is so visually striking that when I was a kid, I've never seen anything like it. Because of its vast uniqueness, it really burrowed itself into my memories as something so special, and that makes its memorable moments even more memorable. I have so many vivid experiences of this world stuck in my brain, and it's all thanks to the Hollow Bastion Showdown. Hollow Bastion is this huge set-piece world smacked right in the middle of the game, and it builds so much intensity for the final battle. I love how the gang are in Hollow Bastion minding their own business, and then the infiltration hits. It's always so exhilarating in stories when the bad guys pay the good guys an unexpected visit and attack their base, thus leading the heroes to defend their home, much like the Monsters Inc. world in KH3. We come to this world under relatively low stakes, and as each new development gets made, the stakes get higher and higher. And I love how the whole town has gathered, everyone here to protect their home, even Stitch. Their efforts are not enough though. Luckily, the ace in the sleeve, being you as the player, or Sora, is here. Sora is the key factor in saving Hollow Bastion from the Heartless, and everybody knows it. Cloud knows it, the organization knows it, Donald and Goofy know it, and even Sora himself knows it.
Anyone from the organization who'd like to be next?
Sora's not afraid of the organization at all, man. It really makes you feel such a strong importance, like the balance of this world relies on you. From the point Demyx pops in, it's all uphill from there. A tough fight against one of the organization members, and then a moment all Kingdom Hearts fans will never forget. I want to know where they got the guts to pull this off. I mean, sure, he's okay 5 seconds later, but this is a pretty big deal. Yeah, we're gonna pretend like Goofy is dead for at least 10 minutes. But man, was this a defining moment in my childhood right here. I mean, sure, it's definitely not as significant as I thought it was back when I was a kid, but you gotta hand it to them. The emotion in this scene is so powerful. Like, you actually feel sad and feel bad for these characters. Like, Sora and Donald are crushed, and then Mickey gets so mad he throws off his cloak. Then this leads to the precursor of the Keyblade War in KH3, where Sora goes around to help all his friends and shows how they can't do anything without him. This is such a treat even to this day, seeing Sora team up with the likes of Leon, Tifa, and Cloud. And yup, this exists. Like, they didn't blow my mind enough already. Sora is confronted with 1,000 Heartless by himself. We can't let Xehanort get away! Yeah, this still gives me chills to this day. Now, this might not be as impressive by today's standards of gaming, but back in the day, I had never seen anything like this before in a video game. It has to be one of the greatest moments in gaming history, and is the grand finale to this intense, tension-filled sequence that I always look forward to in KH2. They built this up so well, they even show you how Sora's winded after the battle and he needs to take a breather. Even after he's shown all his might, he surrenders because he needs Kairi back. This character-defining moment, I think, is really underrated. It shows us a side of Sora that we rarely get to see. And that wraps KH2 Hollow Bastion. In all honesty, I don't think the rest of the game tops this. It's really cool to have the organization boss gauntlet. I think the final act of the game is superb, don't get me wrong. But in my opinion, very few things in the series alone can top this. Again, with perhaps only the Keyblade War being in contention for the top spot. We did talk a lot about story, and the reason why this world is only at number 5 is because for this list in particular, I am weighing world design a bit higher than story. The next 4 worlds are just really special to me. Alright, well, enough talk about Hollow Bastion. There's not much else I could say that hasn't been said already. I'm sure you're quite already well aware of its greatness. At the 4th spot is Timeless River. This classic world has been widely revered amongst the Kingdom Hearts fanbase for good reason. Hey, Can someone turn the muffle off? Ah, there we go. Much better. Timeless River in every aspect is the definition of great idea, great execution. The idea of doing the earliest of Disney's catalog sounds great in theory, but it seems like something that the fans would insist on and they would just never actually do it. But they did it, and it was very well done. This is such a good change of pace for Cage too. There's a definitive purpose for you being here. There's actual lead up and story tension for going back in time to Timeless River. I love how you first come to Disney Castle after it's been threatened. Sora's never been here, and he doesn't really understand the way things are run around the castle. I love how they actually let Donald and Goofy be the hotshots of this world and put Sora in the background for a change. At this point, Mickey is still somewhat of an omniscient presence, and visiting the place he lives really adds to both Mickey's character and the castle itself. I love the little details, like the Donald and Goofy statues in the audience chamber, and I also really appreciate the relaxing atmosphere. The courtyard room especially is just a great place to come to and chill out. While the castle and the river are classified as different worlds, I see them more as one and the same. The two worlds are always synonymous in my head, and I appreciate them both for similar reasons. The presence of Disney original worlds is sorely lacking in the series, which is strange given how integral the main Disney cast is to the story. We rarely ever get to go to one of their worlds. Disney Castle, Timeless River, Disney Town, and I guess Country of Musketeers are the only times in the series that this universe is explored. Out of all these worlds, I feel Timeless River is the best iteration of the Disney universe. There's a vast selection of areas segmented into rooms to really give you a small peek into the larger world. Not only do they create a comfortable environment at the river itself, but these portals to the outside world do a great job at expanding the universe. Every area of this world really gives me the boost of happiness I need for the day. I love Mickey's house. It's such a cozy little room just to relax in, see where the mouse spent his early days. And for the river itself, this is where it all started, huh? To think they really did not emphasize how important this location is to the Disney universe. Maybe that's just part of the small percentage of potential they did not optimize for this world. But hey, you want to talk about Scala Egg Kylum, I hate to break it to you, Xehanort, but this is the nexus from which all worlds spring. I think my fascination for this world is mostly due to the vast amount of questions I have surrounding it. Everybody get ready, rapid fire questions. Okay, so for one, where are these portals located in relation to one another? We know that Cornerstone Hill is the building site for Disney Castle, but what about the construction site? Are they building what becomes in the future Disney Town here? And where is the Lilliput? Where is this island with a miniature town just chilling in the middle? Is this the precursor to the Country of Musketeers? I don't know, probably not. And seriously, how long has it been? Sora clearly states that the characters in this world will be the same ones that we know in the future. But just how long exactly is in between? Donald and Goofy say they have deja vu. So what, you don't remember living in this? How long has it been? And my biggest question, what the heck happened that took Mickey from this to this? How did he become royalty? He's clearly not royalty here, and it's not like he's of royal descent. He lives in the suburbs. I mean, this iteration of him is nothing like the one we know. I need to know what happened in this world and the mouse that made him such a big deal and turned him into a Keyblade warrior. How has nobody wondered this before? I need answers! Phew, got a little carried away there. Jokes aside, it would be nice to have some of these questions answered. So bring this world back. There is a near infinite amount of possibilities that they could do with Timeless River. It's been like 15 years since we've seen it return in any way, and that's such a shame. This world is way too special for it to only make a one-time appearance in the series. So come on, Nomura, Cage 4, you know what to do. We've reached the top 3, and at number 3 we have the Caribbean. They did not have to go this hard on pirates. Like, I'm serious, this world is so good it's almost frustrating. It's kinda like, hey, we're gonna make a Pirates of the Caribbean game and put Kingdom Hearts worlds in it too. For better or for worse, this really does feel like its own game within a game. On one hand, that's an amazing accomplishment, but I also think it's fair to say it bloated Cage 3 a little bit. By this point in the game, you're already so anxious to get to significant story, and then they just throw you in the middle of the ocean and say, here's a ship, have a blast. Well, of course I want to explore, but isn't Aqua waiting for me? This world really reminds me of Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Much like Breath of the Wild, the Caribbean throws you into a massive sandbox and says you can go anywhere. Anything you see in the distance, you can visit. You want to check out that island over there? Of course. Grab your ship and go for it. You want to know what secrets are hidden in this sunken ship? Well, go diving and see for yourself. This world is just so immersive, so expansive, every little detail so expertly crafted. The level of dedication that went into recreating the film and its world is so outstanding that it makes me wonder how much of a Pirates fan Nomura must truly be. This world just kept on giving and giving. Seriously, think of all the stuff crammed into here. Not only are there the sea caverns and the entire Caribbean, but they also included the huge city of Port Royal. KH3 basically took the entire KH2 world and made it a pit stop compared to the massive high seas. I love how there are places from KH2 that were recreated for KH3's Port Royal. This really provides a sense of development and passage of time for the world. A lot of people fault this world for various reasons, whether it's the ship combat, the crabs, the ruler of the sky battle, or the underwater sections. While some of those can be annoyances, I don't think any of them take away from this world's greatness. It gets a lot of hate, but the underwater section adds so much to the world. Sure, the combat is a little stiff, but having this huge explorable ocean in what seems like the same loading zone as the islands makes this world feel truly vast. I mean, what if they had the whole Caribbean section and there was nothing underwater to see? Better yet, what if you couldn't go in the water at all? The sea caverns adds an extra level of depth and immersion to this world. Plus, having this treacherous ocean contributes to the atmosphere of a pirate world, especially where most of the pirates are afraid of creatures of the deep. One thing I really can't defend is the ship combat. I do think it's a big annoyance. There are times when I want to visit this world, but then I stop myself knowing that I'll have to sit through it. But it's a small price to pay for what the ship allows you to do. I just love how it captures the feeling of freedom and adventure on a scale that's unprecedented in the series. It's been 2 years since KH3 came out, and literally while recording footage for this video, I discovered a huge new location that I never knew existed. Every time I come to this world, I feel like there's something new to be seen. Whether it's a new island or something new in the ocean, it all feels so alive and welcoming. The world promotes exploration because there's plenty of it. You could spend hours exploring everything this world has to offer. There's just nothing like it in the series. They set out to make the definitive Pirates world, and they succeeded, basically improving on the first outing of the world in every way. I can say though, I really missed the original dark muddy aesthetic they had going on that fit the style of the original Disney boat ride. KH3's Caribbean is much more grounded in reality, depicting pirate life in a less cartoonish way. It does seem that their priorities were to make a pirate world first and a Pirates of the Caribbean world second. The lack of main character appearances such as Will, Elizabeth, and heck, we don't even get the real Jack for half the world, it's really telling. We still do get to see some cool scenes from the film throughout the world, but it's all happening in the background and you're not really a part of it. And so our presence in this world feels a bit unneeded, which is disappointing given that we have an important mission to do in our own right. We're not so much helping our friends from the Caribbean, rather we're just kind of pretending to be pirates for a day. Like, I get it, Sora, you love it here, but we got stuff to do. Although there's not really a significant plot throughout the middle of the world, they did make it up to us with the ending. The final act of this world is beyond breathtaking. The battle against Davy Jones in the Maelstrom is the example of how to take an action set piece and put it in a game like Kingdom Hearts. It leaves you on the edge of your seat and provides a legendary finale to both pirate worlds amongst the series. The heavy rain matched with a fantastic score always gets me so excited. And finally, for the first time in KH3, we get a humanoid boss fight with Davy Jones. It's always much more fun to fight an iconic villain than a random Heartless, and I hope they do it more often. It always really fascinates me to see them translate scenes from a live-action film, and that especially goes for the Maelstrom set piece. They took a final act of a film that was already widely revered, then recreated it in amazing CGI and added Sora, Donald, and Goofy. I gotta commend all the voice actors, but especially the voice of Jack. He has perfectly replicated the voice of Jack Sparrow, almost to the point where you couldn't tell the difference between the two. I also have to hand it to the voice actor of Davy Jones for an outstanding performance. Their lines and delivery truly add to the drama and help make this a quality cinematic experience. Some of the best moments in this game are in this scene alone. Like, for example, I love when Jack picks up for Sora knowing that he's the most powerful one here, and one of my favorite Sora moments ever is when he gets mad as heck and socks Davy Jones in the head. They really didn't hold back on letting Sora show his emotion here. I also love when Jack and Elizabeth stab the sword into the heart of Davy Jones. The music swells as Jones falls into the water, ending the battle for now even though we lost a dear friend. The amount of effort put into this final act is on the same level as an actual film ending. So back to an earlier question. Am I satisfied with Pirates of the Caribbean and Kingdom Hearts? The answer is yes. If this is the last time we see pirates, well, this is an ending worthy for the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise. This is an iconic cinematic universe, and they did it justice with a world so massive and well crafted that it's truly ahead of its time for the series. There's no doubt in my mind this is one of the best worlds in the series, and it's a grand finale to an amazing franchise in Kingdom Hearts. At my second spot is Olympus. I mainly picked this based off of KH3's iteration of the world, but I'm also taking into account the immense presence this property has in the series. A somewhat cheesy metaphor to sum up all of these worlds in the series is like a big Hercules puzzle. Each game they added a new piece to the puzzle. The first piece was small, the second piece was bigger, the next few pieces helped, and well, we didn't find any pieces in this one. KH3's Olympus was the biggest and most significant piece that really contributed to finishing the puzzle. But it wouldn't be complete without the rest of the pieces, no matter how small. This world just had to appear in KH3. It's almost been in every game in the series, and we couldn't go without it in the ending of the saga. They knew that and made sure it was the best outing so far. Now, I wouldn't call this the definitive Hercules world like I did for Pirates. For that to be the case, this world would have needed pest locations such as the Underworld and the Colosseum Gates. Not to mention, the perplexing omission of any Colosseum in this world really stops me from giving it the label of definitive. But if you somehow took all of the Hercules worlds across the series and compiled them into one, then you definitely get the definitive Hercules world. And maybe that's what they were going for. Olympus feels more like a final act of a long film that has been slowly told throughout each game. And pretty much that's exactly what it is. It took them almost the entirety of the series to tell the plot of the original Hercules movie in full. But that also makes it so rewarding. Throughout each iteration of the world, inch by inch, we push towards this ending. And that same structure is shared with KH3 as a whole. This vast story, slowly told through each entry in the series, finally culminates in this game. There's such strong symmetry in the structure of Olympus and KH3, and having it at the beginning of the game really helps set the stage for what's to come. The layout of Olympus provides varied landscapes and a genuine sense of progression. You can see for yourself how big this world is with the view of Mount Olympus from Thebes. This really puts into perspective how massive the world is and how much distance is covered from top to bottom. There's a wide variety of locations, but each one has a natural transition. They're distinguished with such popping colors. They really nailed the aesthetic of both Greece and Hercules. You can tell this world was based off of a 2D animated film, which in my opinion is a great intentional touch. There's so much genuine attention to detail. Not only do they have cool Easter eggs such as the Achilles heel, but when you revisit Olympus after the story, you're greeted with almost an entirely different world. They took what was being destroyed in the story and reconstructed it. I absolutely love what they did with Thebes and the Realm of the Gods area, but nothing quite beats the mountains. Whenever I enter this area and the Mount Olympus theme starts to play, I get a rush of memories from the first time I played KH3. This area will always remind me of that first night KH3 came out, finally getting to play the game for the first time. So many feelings, from excitement to vindication to hope for what's to come. It will always be a nostalgic area for that reason, but also for being one of the first places we ever saw from KH3. Seriously, when we saw this area in the trailers, I thought, alright, well this has to be some visual trick. There's no way they're going to let us play through all of that. Nope. It was all playable, and this is just one of the many rooms in this world. And to talk a little bit about the story, I love how it ties into the larger plot of KH3. You know, it might have seemed like a cop-out to make one of our limited Disney worlds the tutorial world, but when you realize how much it reflects what happens at the end of the game, there's no doubt it was a great choice for the beginning. Sora is directly influenced by Hercules into doing his heroic acts at the end of the game. Herc's certainty to save Meg at all costs is basically exactly what Sora does for Kairi. Sora's probably thinking of Hercules right here when he makes his decision what to do next. I mean, what other Disney property directly influences not only Sora's actions in the middle of the world, but also at the end of the game? Olympus pays respects to Kingdom Hearts' most recurring property. It feels like a reward to the fans for sticking with the series for so long. Sure, we're missing the Colosseum, but remember what the previous worlds were. Everything that exists in KH3's Olympus is exactly what we were missing in previous titles, and vice versa. Birth by Sleep gave us a taste of Thebes, with locations from 3's world in the backdrop, but KH3 gave us the full course meal 10 years later. I get it, if they had just done the Colosseum, all qualms with this world would be resolved. But all the things we wanted to see from Hercules in the series, they gave us in KH3. Especially Herc as a party member. In the process, they just forgot to give us the only things we did have from the previous Hercules worlds. And with the end of this era of Kingdom Hearts also closes the book on the Hercules film. Unfortunately, I don't think Hercules will return again, at least not for a while. It seems like it's time to say goodbye to our old friends for now. However, thankfully, with Olympus, Kingdom Hearts gave a wonderful tribute to the one world that always had its back.
dream about him.
Well, we are finally at number 1 after a long journey through the world tour. This may or may not be a surprise to many, but my favorite Kingdom Hearts world of all time is Twilight Town. Is it questionable that an original world swipes the top spot after spending nearly an entire video on Disney? Sure, but in the process of creating this video, Twilight Town remained at the top spot with certainty. Its placement on this list was never moved or even challenged. Twilight Town puts the king in Kingdom Hearts. What makes Twilight Town so special? I'll do my best to answer that question, but it's hard to say anything other than it's Twilight Town. Does it deserve its triumphant victory over every other world in the series? From the outside looking in, maybe not. I guess what I'm trying to express is that while other worlds such as Pirates are much more visually and technically advanced, growing up with Twilight Town has given it ultimate status in my mind. It might not seem as impressive to non-Kingdom Hearts fans, but this place has an immovable spot in my childhood. It's almost as if Twilight Town has locked an era of time and preserved it perfectly so that I can relive it whenever I want. In simple terms, when I come here, I'm home. The usual spot, the Tram Common, the Sandlot, Sunset Terrace, these are all places I grew up with. It's just so cozy and relaxing. I love the atmosphere. Like everyone here is happy. The twilight-lit skybox and misty outer world is awe-inspiring. It really makes you wonder what else is out there. This is especially exemplified in the Cage 3 version of the world. Cage 3's Tram Common area really showcases the evolution in the jump from Cage 2 to 3. It was such a joy to see a stunning recreation of this beloved world. The newly added NPCs create a next-level atmosphere for this world and makes it feel alive. While I appreciate this world for what it did, I am disappointed that it's so small. In the grand scheme of things, I'm happy Cage 3 has Twilight Town in the first place. Much like the 100 Acre Wood, I'd rather it be here than not. But there really should have been more. At first I thought quality over quantity. While this world is small, it's extremely well done. But then I remember how huge Port Royal is. I think it's safe to say that all of Port Royal is bigger than Twilight Town. But that was just a mere pit stop amongst a huge open sandbox in the Caribbean. Now Port Royal is very similar to the design of Twilight Town, being a city with plenty of NPCs. So why was that a bigger priority than Twilight Town, which is our only hub world? Still, I can't fault it too bad because of how amazing the area is. It really brings me back and I'm glad they did it. Additions like Winnie the Pooh, the Bistro, and Little Chef gives it the level of depth an original world should have. Side note, apparently the canon is that Cage 2 and 3 take place a couple weeks apart, but the evidence doesn't really add up to me. Like, you tell me how they completely remodeled this area into the Bistro in a couple weeks. And correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't Cage 2 the end of the summer? Now Hayner, Pence, and Olette are on summer vacation again. So if you ask for my opinion, I'd say at the very least Cage 2 and 3 are a couple months apart, maybe even more. Cage 3's Twilight Town doesn't leave much to be explored, but at the very least, you can go out of bounds and see the rest of the world. Seeing all of this so beautifully remastered and realized is both amazing and frustrating. Why isn't any of this actually playable, or for that matter, even visible in the areas that we can play in? This world is so massive and expansive compared to what they gave us. I wish we could have gone to these parts of the world. Areas so beautiful shouldn't be locked behind a glitch. And even if people do decide to go out of bounds, you can easily fall through the map and soft lock your game. So most people won't get the chance to see all of this firsthand. And it's really just such a shame because of how well made it is. This is everything I wanted from Cage 3's Twilight Town, but it's not ours because we can't access it through normal means. I know this is a lot of complaining for my top spot, but I have a high bar for this world, so I'm more disappointed if there are missed opportunities. Still, I love Twilight Town and Cage 3. Like I said, I'm happy it's here at all, but Cage 2's Twilight Town is still the king. It has so many areas that contribute to the world building. The underground tunnels, the woods, and the back alleys, they all just really add to the immersion. I also really love the mansion. You know, it kind of reminds me when we were kids, there was always that one house that everyone would say is haunted, and this is pretty much the Twilight Town equivalent of that. It's so cool and mysterious. I wouldn't be surprised if this will become much more relevant in the future. And Sunset Terrace, I love this area so much. If I could live anywhere in the Kingdom Hearts universe, it would be here. It just seems so relaxing. KH2 Twilight Town is the personification of summer 2007 playing Kingdom Hearts 2 and Pokemon Pearl all day, every day. This world is just a rush of nostalgia to my head. It exemplifies freedom and happiness, where the harshness of reality is non-existent. And that theme is also why this was the perfect setting of Roxas' story. A story about how the harshness of reality needs to be hidden from him until the perfect moment when it all comes crashing down. You know, I could go on for days about the plot of Roxas' story, and I think that's a video for a different day. But what I will say is that this world is the setting to one of the most masterfully created video game stories ever made, even if it goes unrecognized by most. It was such a gutsy move to make you play as Roxas for hours before you can actually get to the game you bought. Your frustration with him at first is the way the rest of the world feels about him. He's just a roadblock to get to Sora, the one we all care about. But then you start to actually care about Roxas, and when that happens, they immediately give you what you've been asking for. Now Sora's here, and Roxas is cast aside. I think there's one scene that really perfectly captures the story, and it's the one titled Tears. Hayner, Pence, and Olette come to see Sora off, and as Sora says goodbye to them, he starts to cry. That's Roxas speaking through Sora. Imagine how powerful Roxas' emotion must have been to breach Sora's physical state. There's a feeling like nobody wants to let go, but Sora gets on the train, and Roxas leaves his home behind. Saying goodbye to Twilight Town is like saying goodbye to my childhood. I'll always love this scene for exemplifying that. It's like they knew this place would resonate so strong with us for years to come. Twilight Town has achieved and will always have a special place in my heart. Whenever I need it, I know it'll be there for me.